Hi, everybody. It's Miss Amanda from the Joliet Public Library. I sure do miss seeing your faces, and I can't wait until we can all see each other again at the library and at your school. And I've got to tell you, I've got something super exciting today. We have an author in our midst on Zoom, you guys, a real author. This is Mr. Ben Guterson. And Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. This is super exciting. I have so many questions. We have so little time, but I want to start with Winter House because I can't resist. So you wrote these books and I just devoured all three of them in the last 10 days or 2 weeks. And I loved them so much. And I'm wondering if you can give us maybe a 60-second, 90-second book talk of this series.
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, huge thanks to the Joliet Public Library and you, Amanda, and all the good folks there for inviting me to join you and speak to all the young readers in the Joliet area. Maybe I'll get a chance to visit there in person someday, but for now, it's really great to be able to join you virtually through this visit. So yeah, the three books are Winter House, and the second one was The Secrets of Winter House, and the third in the trilogy that completes it is The Winter House Mysteries. And essentially the books are about a girl named Elizabeth Summers, and there she is there. And at the beginning of the first book, she's 11 years old, and she lives with a mean aunt and uncle, and basically, through mysterious circumstances, she gets sent for the Christmas or winter vacation to a place called the Winter House Hotel. She thinks it's going to be terrible, but it's really nice. She loves it there. It's a beautiful place. And in the first book, she finds this strange magical book. She makes friends with a boy named Freddie. And over the course of the three books, the two of them sort of unravel a lot of mysterious things that are going on in the hotel, and they learn a lot about the history of the hotel, and they learn a little bit about themselves and their friendship and so on as they grow up over about a year and a half. So there's a lot of mysteries, a lot of secrets to uncover, and there's a lot of sort of like wordplay and word games. They solve a lot of clues through things like anagrams and word ladders and palindromes and things like that. So if you like magic and mystery, it might be the kind of series that you would enjoy.
I think that was a pretty perfect quick book talk. Can you tell us how you got the idea to write this story?
Well,
or stories?
Yeah, you know, the inspiration actually came from my youngest daughter. She's, grown up now, but basically, in a real quick nutshell, she wanted to take a walk to a little lake by her house one day when she was about 8 or 9. And she wanted to draw pictures and write stories. And so I just started writing a little story and drew a little picture of like this hotel in the mountains. And I read her the story. I wrote like 3 paragraphs on the back of the paper. And I read it to her. And then she said, "Dad, you should now write the whole book." And I thought, I don't know anything about writing a book. But over the years, she kind of kept asking me about this. And my other kids kind of started teasing me about it. And eventually, when Natalie was about 16 or so, I started trying to write the book, and I worked and worked and worked and had a lot of fun on it. And eventually it turned into a real book, which ended up amazing me. So that's how the inspiration came. But I'll tell you one interesting thing. I wanted to kind of write a book that was sort of like a story called The House with a Clock in Its Walls. It was a book that came out when I was a little kid, and it was a movie a couple years ago. And it's a really cool story. I bet a lot of you readers in Joliet are familiar with it because it was a movie about 2 or 3 years ago. But I loved that book when I was in about 5th grade. And I always thought, gosh, I'd love to write a book kind of like that someday. So that's sort of how it came about.
Well, I have to say, after I read these 3 books, I've been thinking about them constantly for the last couple of weeks, and they're, to me, so much more than just that storyline of Elizabeth and Freddie and then Elena too, with all of the puzzles and the codes. And you mentioned them a little bit in the wordplay, but the other thing that I really liked a lot, and I think kids will like too, is the so many mentions of people and places, so many that I was like writing little notes to myself and getting my phone out and looking things up, and I was like, is this a real place? Is this a real person? What is this? I've never heard of this. And they all started kind of to blend together. And I wondered, the things that you put in there that were real, did you have reasons for putting those particular things in there, or were they just kind of fun to say because that seems like a thing too? I mean, I can think of a specific mention of Walla Walla as a place, like in conjunction with these other crazy places, like not Kazakhstan, but like these locations, and you're like, what is this? Is this a real country or what? So, I mean, I looked all kinds of things up, and I wondered if you were giving us these little side lessons, or like rabbit holes maybe, as they might have been for me, but what the significance is, I guess, of putting some of those people and places into the books.
Well, I always enjoy stories that have a lot of sort of like richness and depth and references and so on. Because in these three Winterhouse books, you probably noticed I made references to a lot of other books. You know, everything from like Anne of Green Gables to Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library. You know, all these books that, you know, people might like, because I like them a lot too. It'd be kind of fun if Elizabeth, as a real bookworm, was always referring to books and thinking about situations similar to what she was experiencing herself. So I like doing that. I like referring to places, you know, that people might have visited, or there might have been visitors to the Winterhouse Hotel from this place or that place. And I just like a sort of a lot of richness of detail. As you mentioned, it kind of makes you think about sort of the vastness of the world with Winterhouse at its center. And I think that it can create sort of a nice texture for the story, that it seems like Winterhouse really exists in a real world somewhere. So yeah, if it aroused your imagination about looking up places and so on, that'd be great. By the way, Walla Walla is a real place. I live near Seattle in Washington State, and Walla Walla is on the other side of the street. I always love that name. It sounds kind of made up, but it really is a real place.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you mentioned the books, the number of books that you include. You know, Elizabeth's always reading some book, and Freddie's kind of laughing at her and making fun of her and saying, oh, you and your books, you know. But I really appreciated, of course, you know, I'm a librarian. I appreciated the librarian in the Winterhouse books. And I like that you kind of flipped Leona the librarian and Elizabeth, when the librarian, the adult, would ask Elizabeth for book recommendations. You know, Leona the librarian knows all the books in the Winterhouse library, which is massive, but she would say, oh, or Elizabeth would say, oh, here, this is a book that I've been reading lately, or what else do you recommend? I loved that. And I want to know where you get your reading recommendations and what you're reading currently.
Well, I've been lucky to be able to visit a lot of schools prior to, you know, the pandemic or COVID shutdown. But, you know, for a few years now, I've been able to visit schools around the country and a lot locally in the Seattle area. And so I'm able to hear from a lot of kids like what they enjoy reading. And that has informed some of my reading decisions over the last few years. You know, everything from the Mysterious Benedict Society series, which I really enjoy. There's the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend, the Book Scavenger series by Jennifer Bertman, and there's all kinds of great books that I hear about all the time. So I'm always either buying them at a local bookstore or getting them from the library and checking them out. So I love to read middle grade literature. I love to read all kinds of books, but of course I write middle grade, so I really enjoy hearing about those recommendations. And I ask, you know, kids to give me recommendations. Sometimes on my website, someone will write me something and say, oh, you should check out this, or I'll hear about things. So it's nice once you kind of get more and more connected to people who love books. They are happy to tell you what they enjoyed reading. They think, well, maybe this guy will like reading that as well. So yeah, and if you have some good ones, Amanda, let me know. I'm always happy to check them out.
All right, so I have a lot of questions from kids, my own children, and then a couple other students that I've heard from. And the first one I want to ask you is, it kind of goes back to when you first started writing or thinking about the Winterhouse story, when your daughter was small. And one of my kids said this morning, how do you even write a whole book? I mean, I can barely write 3 to 5 paragraphs that I have to write for this reader's response. So how do you make that jump, obviously, from a kid to you, an adult?
Well, you know, for me, I think about a story or a possible story for quite a long time. Sometimes I think like it kind of like, incubates in my mind for a year or two. I think about kind of a setting or maybe like some incident that seems kind of suspenseful or interesting. And then I start thinking, how would a person be in that situation? And would they have a friend or like an aunt or uncle, or, is there a bad guy, or like, how did this get, and then in the setting, if it's going to be a hotel or a library or something, what kind of books would be there? Who would be visiting? And all those ideas, I write them down. And I gather up a whole bunch of ideas. I mean, ideas that might spread across like 30 or 40 pages typed out, like a long document about setting, characters, plot ideas. It just might go on and on and on and on. And after a while, many months, I might look at it and start thinking like, that looks connected. And then I'll create an outline, a sort of a loose outline of things, and try to figure out how could it move from A to B to C and just sort of keep going. So I think in all of this, what I'm getting at is it happens for me over time. It's not like I just sit down and suddenly one thing and then the next thing. I have to think about it and plan it out for a long time. And then it's slowly, like the story slowly starts to emerge, and then I feel ready to start putting it down. So everyone has their own way of doing it, but that's what works for me. I let the story move through my mind and my thoughts for a long time. I gather notes, and then I feel like I have a whole world and a whole story in my head and on a piece of paper with notes that I can turn into an actual draft. That's how I do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you have not always been a writer. You had some other jobs in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did you know you wanted to move from another job to being an author, a writer?
Yeah, well, in college, I went to the University of Washington in Seattle. That's where I was born and raised. And like I said, I loved reading books, so I became an English major, because if you're an English major, you just get to read a lot of books in college, and that seemed like a natural thing. And I loved it so much that I thought, well, it'd be fun to share that with other people, so I became an English teacher. I was really fortunate. I have two great brothers and sisters, and a mother and father who passed away, and all of them were teachers in one way or another at one point in their lives, and that was a great example to me. And so I became a teacher, and I taught at a public high school in New Mexico for 7 years out of college. And then I taught at a public, it was like a middle school. It was actually a school from kindergarten all the way through to 12th grade, all the grades in one building. I taught there for 3 years, and I really loved that. Then I moved on actually to coming back to the Seattle area with my wife and kids, and I worked at Microsoft, which was kind of a strange jump. But it happened. And I worked there for many, many years, actually even a little bit longer than I was a school teacher. But in the background, I was always writing, like every night. I loved to write so much that no matter what else was going on, I would carve out an hour every night to write. And I stuck to it like day after day after day. And then I started working on the story that I was telling you about that you've read. And through just some weird circumstances, I connected with a good agent. I learned you need an agent if you want to write books, and then she connected me with a great book company, and then they actually published the books. And at that point I thought, maybe I'll stop working at Microsoft and just write books all the time. So that's what I've been doing for several years now. And it's a lot of fun. I'll put it that way. I love doing it. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, good. And I'm glad that you wrote those Winter House books. And I know that you've written a couple more books. Can you give us a quick little synopsis of what we can look forward to?
Yeah, the next two books are not related to Winter House at all. They're not like continuation of the series. The next one will come out next year in 2021, and it's called The Vista Point Einsteins. And it's about a family with 4 kids, a mother and father, and they moved from a big city to way out in the country to start like a bed and breakfast, kind of like a mini hotel kind of place, I guess you could say. But it's kind of sad because they actually lost their youngest child a little bit before. And so they're trying to change their whole way of life. And the next youngest child, named Zach, he feels kind of guilty because he was with the youngest one when she died. So the family's moved to this new place, and Zach's trying to sort of, regain some happiness in his life. And then all these mysterious things happen. One night the kids see some lights flashing way on the other side of the river, and they get involved in some mysterious stuff, because again, I like mysteries. And maybe through the whole experience, it will help Zach kind of maybe come to terms with the loss of his sister. So there's a little bit of mystery and stuff like that. And then the one after that in 2022 is called The Hidden Workshop of Javier Preston. And it's about a man who lives down in the southern part of the United States, like over near the Atlantic Ocean. And he is 95 and he's a famous artist. And he lives at the way at the top of a big art institute, and almost no one has seen him in like 72 years. And every year he produces a new work of art, and the whole world waits to see what it is. And one year, these two twins, this boy and girl, well, late one night, they look way up at the art institute. They see the man looking down at them. And it turns out there's something mysterious going on, because some bad guys are trying maybe to steal some art he has created. And the kids get involved in helping to solve the mystery. So those are the next two books. They're separate from each other and separate from your house.
Right. So more mysteries. I'm really excited. Super quick last thing, because I have to know, can you anagram the word library?
Oh gosh,
come on,
that is tough.
On the spot. Come on.
Library by rail. Did I get it? I missed one word. By a rail.
By a rail. All right, that works. So for you kids that are watching this, you don't know yet, but when you read the Winter House books, you are in for such a treat, because there are so many puzzles and just crazy stuff that I've never seen before. But like I said, I'm thinking about it all the time now. So anagrams are one of those things in there. And I knew that Mr. Guterson, if he's got Elizabeth and Freddie, the two characters, they just constantly are coming up with more anagrams. I thought, if they're doing it, he must be able to do it too. He must just throw it out.
I do it, but I didn't get it. I'm looking at library right now. That was a hard one for me, so I didn't quite get it. But I do love anagrams.
I had to give you one. One
gosh!
Shocker.
I'll be ready. Don't even ask me that one again. I will definitely be ready.
All right. Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. And I am so looking forward to reading the next books. And maybe we'll get to meet someday in Joliet.
I'd love it. I'd love to come in person. It's been a lot of fun talking to you today, Amanda. And if any of the kids enjoy the video, I hope maybe they all enjoy reading some of the books as well. But whatever books they read, I hope they enjoy them. Thank you so much for having me talk to you today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.